for this meeting was just 18 written submissions. And so we have a significant lot less than what I expected. So the meeting will go as the way it normally goes. So with that, I just want to welcome everyone to the Community Infrastructure Services Committee for Monday, March 8th, 2021. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall is open for select services by appointment only. Members of the public are invited to participate in the meeting electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca, whatever that is, watch now. And while in person, delegates' requests are not feasible at this time, members of the public are invited to submit written comments or participate electronically in the meetings by contacting delegations at kitchener.ca. Delegates must register by 8:30 a.m. on March 8th, 2021. In order to participate electronically, written comments will be circulated prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. So with that, we will start off with our consent items. And do we have Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, I'll move them, but I have some questions on 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. All right, we'll take a motion to move those out. Do we have anyone that is prepared to move that? Councillor Davey, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Gazzola. You're the only one?
Yeah, yeah, okay. On item number 4, it's dealing with the parking up in Belmont Village. I just want to ask the staff are there, where do I see if Barry Cronkite is there? Yeah. I just wanted to know, is there parking right now on Rock Avenue where they're showing the parking to change?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, there is. Through the reconstruction of Rock Ave, some of the parking was reconfigured. So we're doing some bylaw cleanup to make those parking spaces formalized in the uniform traffic bylaw.
Yeah, how many spots are there?
There's approximately, depending on the size of the car, but between 3 and 4 spaces on each side of Rock Ave.
The other question I wondered is those spaces at the nearest give the longest. They're 2-hour spaces, where spaces further away are 1 hour. Why wouldn't it be the reverse of that? Why wouldn't you want those closer spaces moving faster? Just a question.
Through the chair to the councillor, the spaces that were there previous to the recon were 2 hour. So we're just carrying that forward and keeping that consistent. We did have a discussion about this internally with the team. There's a lot of restaurants in Belmont Village. So we felt the 2 hour time limit helps accommodate that. So that's the reason for the longer duration.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to know that. Thanks.
Okay. Are the other questions related to item number 4? No? Okay. So we will move on to, which item did you wanted to speak on, Councillor Gazzola? Other items?
Number 5 and 6.
Okay, so we'll move to number 5. We'll go with you again, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, no, on number 5, it's I just want to compliment staff or whoever is responsible for carrying on with this, because I think it's an excellent program. It allows people to make contributions to organizations who don't have a charitable registration number, and it does help them. And we saw that even last year there was about $135,000 contributed this way. Can staff give me an idea how did that compare to a normal year? Last year not being quite normal. Any idea or no?
Through the chair, I don't have those stats in terms of seeing how it compared, but I certainly can provide an email as a follow-up to let you know how it compared to previous years.
Okay, that's fine. The other thing I wanted to know is it possible to add Chicopee Ski Club to that list? I know that they're suffering. I'm still a member of Chicopee, and when you get to be a certain age, they let you ski for free, which is wonderful. But I know that they've had a tough year, and I would like. I mean, to me, they're like a minor sports organization in that they have a lot of young people skiing. So, is it possible just to add them to the list, or?
So through the chair, I could connect with staff to understand how they're treated in terms of related to the city. Certainly, I think if it was possible, we would allow it to happen. I don't think it needs to be added necessarily to the recommendation. That's the takeaway that I can take back to staff.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Marsh
I'm for number 6.
for number 6. Okay, Councillor Chapman, are you for number 6 too?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, are you for number 5?
I am for number 5.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to concur with Councillor Gazzola that I'm really happy that we are continuing this program this year. It is much needed. Being able to donate to our neighborhood associations, to the Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber physician recruitment program really are kind of long-term initiatives that we need to keep supporting even while we're in some of these tougher times. So I just wanted to give accolades on that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have Mayor Urbanovic. Is this for item number 5?
Yeah, just briefly, and I'm supportive of where Councillor Gazzola was going with it. I think Chicopee, though, may actually already have their own status in that regard, but staff can double check that when they talk to them.
Okay. And Councillor Schneider, are you on item number 5?
Yes. Just wanted to thank Councillor Gazzola for bringing Chicopee up. They are a not-for-profit. They're not a private ski club. They're a not-for-profit, and they really make their facility available for city use and partner with the city. So a really good recommendation by Councillor Gazzola.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to item number 6. And okay, go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I didn't want that. There's been a lot of work done by staff in preparing reports for our water distribution system, and I just wanted to give them an opportunity to give us a 3 or 4 minute run over what our conditions for water quality are, and if there are any problems. I thought that we should spend 2 minutes on this topic. So basically, that's my concern. I wondered a question. Does the region also prepare a lengthy report like this, or is it up to each of the area municipalities?
We'll have Ms. Mick do a quick response.
Through the chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The region does prepare reports. Their reports are more analytical, so they will have a report with values for a lot of the parameters they sample for. So they don't really get into, how many valves they operated and things like that. And their reports are posted online and they provide us a copy. As far as our drinking water system goes, we had a really good year despite COVID. So we were off to a slow start with maintenance and the capital projects, but the weather cooperated this year. We had a long fall, so we were able to get all the maintenance done. As far as the state of the system, I think we're in good shape. Our water main breaks have decreased our 5-year average. Water quality, we kept doing our sampling, even though it was a bit of a struggle getting into different places. But all in all, I think we had a good year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to congratulate staff on helping us to maintain our quality of good quality in our water supply. It looks like you are helping us to maintain our due diligence regardless of the pandemic, and I'm glad to hear the report that any concerns have been addressed immediately, and that we don't have any serious concerns. I am curious though about the construction season, when we have construction companies who are not maintaining the ports for the checks, for the safety checks. And so we're getting, as it said in the report, a lot of false positives, which doesn't sound good. And so I'm just hoping that Ms. Mick, if you can just elaborate on how we might be able to make sure that construction companies understand how serious it is.
Through the chair, I have education touch points with the contractors at the beginning of all of our construction meetings. We also do a construction symposium in mid-March to let them know the importance of this item. Since this year was worse than last year, that's going to be an item we really focus on this year. Also, I do have the ability to charge the various contractors, and last year I charged 3 contractors our costs and a fee, and sometimes that gets through to them more than education. We try to do both, and I'm hoping that we can convey the importance of that, because when we have an adverse, it's not fun for anyone. It slows down construction. It's not great for the residents. It's not great for paperwork and city response. So I think we all realize that nobody wants that. So just.
Thanks. I think that that aligns with our council and staff procedures anyway. You know, our council direction and staff procedures to educate first, but to incentivize with a fee, with the threat of a fee if they don't comply. So I think that we should continue with that as our approach, and to not be afraid to fee even after just one incident where they needed an extra bit of education. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the brief update, Angela, or Ms. Mick. I also had questions about the actual development thing, but I think that was answered. And I just wanted to say that that I was really pleased to read that the discolored water problem, certainly around the Strange Street site, has been not necessarily fully solved, but certainly managed much better than it was in the past. So are you confident that, you know, once this site gets up and running again, which I know it's probably going to be a year at least from now, will that problem of the discolored water be resolved?
Through the chair, once it goes back online, we're going to have to do a little bit more flushing, because the flows coming out of there are going to be higher than they were. So even though we cleaned before it went offline, we're going to have to do a little bit of cleaning again. So we might experience some discolored water just as it comes back online, but I'm confident that that's one of the major sources. So we will never get rid of discolored water completely. As flows change, that will happen. But I think that the Strange Street is going to solve a lot of problems. And I believe we've already seen that since it's been offline.
Okay, and I think it's important to remind residents that even if it's discolored, it doesn't mean that it's contaminated. Is that correct?
Through the chair, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just on page 60, and this is a bit off topic, but where it refers to the consumer feedback section, I just wanted to, and I know this has been brought up by Councillor Gazzola before, that it was interesting to me to see that the website communication was not as effective as hand-delivered notices. And it was just sort of a reminder to me that, yes, we have to think of all the different ways to communicate with residents when we're doing public outreach and trying to inform people of what we're doing and what things are. So you don't need to respond to that. I just wanted to note that observation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so we will now move into the delegations, and we will go from, I guess, sorry, consent items was moved from Councillor Gazzola 1 to 7, and that was passed. Now we will go to delegations. And just before I go to delegations, I just wanted to remind delegates, pursuant to council's procedural bylaw, delegations are permitted to address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes. So with that, yes, we will have, yes, I was just about to say that. Thank you. We have Mr. McCrinnan Jones to give us a brief PowerPoint, and I'm not, and also in attendance we have Mr. Cronkite and Mr. Ryder as well. So welcome. And thank you, Diana, for that reminder.
Good morning to the council and the virtual chamber. We'd like to start with just a quick overview of the 2019 formal traffic calming review projects, the timeline impacts from COVID-19, our plan forward, as well as some additional background regarding the Deer Ridge Drive project specifically. So Holborn Drive, Robert Ferry Drive, and Deer Ridge Drive received council approval to initiate a formal traffic calming review in early 2019. Following this approval, each neighborhood was surveyed to ensure resident support to initiate the formal traffic calming review. And then the initiation survey was followed by 2 in-person public information centers and a final survey to determine implementation support for the preferred plan. That same overall process was applied to each of the 3 traffic calming review locations, and the process was outlined in a lot of detail at each community meeting. We were planning on bringing the report that's before you today forward in spring of 2020 to be in a position to implement approved projects in summer of 2020. However, we were delayed by COVID-19 on several fronts. Fortunately, however, each of the 3 formal traffic calming reviews had substantially completed the formal traffic calming review process before those initial COVID lockdowns last year. And that included the final resident surveys. So our schedule has been revised to ensure that traffic calming reviews that are approved by council through this cycle would be built in the 2021 construction season. The final implementation survey for Holborn, Robert Ferry, and Deer Ridge generally indicates support for implementation. While participation rates weren't necessarily achieved, which can happen, notably on larger projects or projects with larger distribution areas, but there was a majority support demonstrated from those who did respond to the implementation surveys. Just to highlight Deer Ridge Drive a little further, this was a very large distribution area with approximately 720 addresses included in the engagement process, as well as the surveys. While there are not 720 homes directly fronting onto Deer Ridge Drive, there are approximately 155 homes that front onto Deer Ridge Drive. We did feel it was important to engage beyond those minimum requirements of the policy to also hear from residents who reside on the connecting cul-de-sacs, crescents, and the smaller local roads. So we're sharing with you on the a map which helps to visually summarize the voting results in the neighborhood. The streets that you see colored green show majority support from responding residents, and the streets that you see in red show majority opposition from responding residents. Now, the intent of this map is to only show the transition from areas of support to areas of opposition as we move from the northeast of the Deer Ridge neighborhood down to the southwest. Now, in terms of the overall vote, and that's the entire neighborhood, all 720 addresses, there was a 42% response rate for the final implementation survey, or 303 votes received, with a support rate of 54%, or 165 votes in support. Now, in terms of the homes directly fronting Deer Ridge, there was a 47.7% response rate with a 60.7% support rate for implementation of the 8 traffic calming measures that were originally proposed. So again, It's not required by policy, but we did feel it was important to engage those homes and residents living on those connecting streets. And based on all the feedback that we received from those residents, we did scale back the preferred plan from 8 traffic calming measures to 3. And now the 3 traffic calming measures that you see highlighted in yellow, they're located where there's the most support based on the voting map in front of you, but also where we see the highest speeds, traffic speeds, and the highest traffic volumes based on our empirical data. So with that, I'll wrap up our overview of the 2019 Traffic Calming Review Program. We'd be happy to answer any questions after the delegates have had a chance to make their presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. McCrinnan. We will now move to delegates, and please to have you guys answer get questions from staff after the delegations have spoken. So with that, we have our first delegate, Mr. Adam Zimmer.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chair. I believe I had some slides. I was the understanding that they would be put up by someone.
Here you go.
So just a little background. I am conscious of the time, so we'll try to make sure we get through the small number of slides here. I've been a resident of Deer Ridge for about almost 5 years now. I have a family with a 4-year-old and 10-year-old, which attend school in downtown Kitchener. And I also suffer from a back injury. You may notice I'm at a standing desk. So every time I traverse a vertical measure, of which there are many around town, doesn't matter how fast or slow I'm going, it ends up causing me pain. And I also unfortunately had my father pass away 2 years ago from a heart attack. And I also have my somewhat elderly mother-in-law visit us from time to time. So I am very conscious of emergency response time. And I do want to point out the one and only direct route into Deer Ridge is the one that's proposed for the traffic calming measures. So I have tried to focus my presentation not on personal issues, but on facts. And with that, I'll start out with the kind of top line, which is in spite of the portrayal by the city traffic calming staff, the numbers don't add up. Could we please turn to the next slide? So, you know, fundamentally, having talked with traffic staff, I do want to commend them for taking the time to answer my questions. It became apparent that there were insufficient responses. The staff has mentioned, and I have reviewed the policy, 50% response rate is required. 42% is less than 50%. Similarly, of those, the council traffic staff mentioned that a majority of support was measured. Unfortunately, the policy says a majority isn't good enough. 60% is needed. Once again, 54% is less than 60. And I also took some time to review the 2019 traffic study, which classified Deer Ridge as a major collector. And that's kind of a long-winded way of saying it's a key road in and out for emergency response vehicles, for fire. And in December of this past year, there was a significant fire in Deer Ridge at a home. And policy, once again, states that vertical measures are to be avoided on major collectors. So it seems in 3 different ways, we're ignoring policy and best practices. Next slide, please. So just a little more detail. These are the same numbers that were shared a couple minutes ago, but I think it's handy to see them. Once again, it's nice to say a majority supports it, but the policy was written for a reason. It had to have substantial public support, over 60%, not 54%. And similarly, 42% is not 50%. Once again, the policy is being disregarded. And I actually pulled up the information that was shared with residents. And I find this very disturbing because residents were assured that a plan would not be implemented unless there was 60% support from 50% of affected residents. Once again, 54% is not 60 and 42% is not 50. Next slide, please. Here again, we see the actual text from the 2019 traffic calming priority list with Deer Ridge classified as a major collector. Next slide, please. And once again, I pull up the policy that was shared with residents that vertical deflection devices, such as 2 of the 3 proposed measures, should be avoided on major collectors. Next slide. In the end, the plan doesn't make the grade. The city does not have a mandate to proceed. Even if there was a mandate from the survey response, the plan contradicts the guidelines from the city. So I ask why we would proceed with a bad plan that has insufficient support in the time of a pandemic, which, as Councillor Gazzola pointed out, there are a lot better ways to use resources. I believe my time's up, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. We do not have any questions for you. Our next delegate is Dave Sutka. Hopefully I pronounced that accurately. I do apologize if I didn't.
I'm sorry, I noticed it appears Dave is not logged in.
Okay, so all right, then our next delegate is Lourdes Jordao. Again, I do apologize for the pronunciations.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Hi, folks. So my name is Lourdes Jordao. I'm going to first start off just giving you a little bit of background about myself. I have been in the Deer Ridge area, primarily on Deer Ridge Drive. So I am one of the homes that fronts Deer Ridge Drive. I'm significantly impacted. I've been in the neighborhood for 21 years. So since the inception of Thomas Field Homes, coming into being one of the first builders to build the homes. And then further down a couple of years later, they went and there was continuous development towards the end of the neighborhood. I am also the acting president for Settlers Grove Community Association, which is one of the neighborhood associations in the area. So we support a lot of programs for our residents of Settlers Grove. The association is comprised of approximately 273 households. If you look at the diagrams back in the presentation, we are the front block with the I believe it's 83% in favor support. I do have have been given the support of our residents that to represent at this meeting that we are very strongly in favor of the calming efforts. And in fact, we would even like to see more if we could in the first block. You have to understand that being here for almost 21 years, for myself will be August of this year, will be 21 years. We have been living with this nightmare for so many years. We've been begging, lobbying. We are very concerned with the safety, not only of our residents, our children. I myself have a husband who has mobility issues, and I actually check the mail across the street in the boxes because I'm afraid he's going to get hit. The speed of which the traffic comes from the beginning at the corner of King, most residents, and I have seen this, I will have cars behind me revving up because how dare I stop at a stop sign? Once I pass that stop sign, and that's around the Candle Crescent, the very beginning of the Candle Crescent, you will then see that person that was revving behind me just roll right through the stop sign. They will just go right through. About 15 years ago, we also had a car coming down speeding, and it was around St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, who literally hit a snowdrift and went flying in the air, knocked out 2 trees and landed in somebody's front yard. So I'm not going to get into any other items in that. My biggest focus here is letting the city know that I'm 100% in support, and I do have the backing of 273 households. We will agree to practically anything the city can give us because we have been begging and lobbying for so long, and we're just so tired of seeing the near misses And I, again, as a personal resident, I am also one of the fronting Deer Ridge resident, and I feel that there should be a specific consideration to the people that are actually living on Deer Ridge, having to deal with this and almost not being able to pull their vehicles out of their driveway to go conduct their day-to-day activities. I think that's all I had to say. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, and I thank you so much for spearheading this project and for listening to me today.
No worries, Ms. Jordeo. You were in well within your time, and we do have a couple of questions for you from committee. Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you, Lardona. Thank you for coming in. One of the questions I wanted to know is how many people you represent, and you did. I think you mentioned that there was 270 or so families that you represent.
Yes. So that could be anywhere from, some households have couples, or some people may have 4, may 6, but we count it by the household. So it's 273 households. So if you look back on the diagram of the traffic calming, it's the first section. That whole area is who I am representing. So the entrance to Deer Ridge.
So you have lived in the area for a considerable period of time. I don't know if you remember back, within the last 20 years, this has been a problem from the get-go because of the way the subdivision is sort of set out. And about 10, 12 years ago, we did try a few measures, such as a couple of hallway stops and all that. You're familiar with that, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. There's very little. I did want to thank you for taking the opportunity to really canvass the people in your section of the block who probably are more affected than other people. So thank you for coming and presenting.
Yeah, we are, because we're the entrance to the rest of the neighborhood. So we have the most impact in this in the traffic that's happening.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. We have one more, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. Lourdes, thank you so much for appearing and all the work that you're doing on this. I just wanted to ask about just to get your personal opinion on kind of the impact of having the golf course on that road too. Like sometimes residents that live there, they may be more attentive to speeds and safety. And it hasn't been, with COVID, it hasn't been quite as, as noticeable. But could you maybe just talk about maybe the effect of the golf course and the golf?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I would have to say that when it's spring and summer, when we have the golfers, you will see an increase of the speeders. However, when it's not golf season and during COVID, when it's pretty much closed down, we still have the speeders. So it is not necessarily just the golfers. Yes, we will see a slight increase during the golf season, but I've been watching for the last almost 2 years, because we're now over a year into COVID. It's still happening. They're not golfing. I'm sorry, but they're not golfing. And you know what? They go past the golf course. Because I do a lot of walks too. So I do walk fairly down on a daily basis. I go for walks. And again, the rolling of the stop signs. And I'll tell you, I would have to say it's closer to 100 kilometers on some days when it's really nice weather and road conditions. So yes, going back to your question, yes, during this golf season, you'll see a slight increase, but this is happening all the time.
Okay, thanks so much. I certainly appreciate that it does happen all the time, but I think too with the golf course, it kind of adds to it and adds to
it's an added burden in the spring, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Jordeo, for coming in. I just have a question about whether or not over these last 20 years, you've found any other methods to try to help with traffic calming before we got this traffic calming review. For example, some neighborhoods use signs that say things like drive like your children live here, or, you know, that type of thing. And I'm just wondering if you've found any other ways yet that you think work.
No, up till now, we have not found any other ways. As I indicated earlier, we've been lobbying for about 21 years. We did have at one point, I can't even remember how long that was. I'm going to have to guess about 15 years ago, we had the Regional of Waterloo Police come out and conduct a presentation. And in fact, they're the ones, not them, out of those discussions came the stop signs at Candle Crescent and further down by the golf course, past the golf course. So those were measures that were put in about 15 years ago. What happened then, because there was existing stop signs, but we put additional ones. It was thought that if you put one on each end, that maybe people will slow down. What's happening now is people are just rolling through those stop signs. There's also been a couple of years ago, Regional Waterloo were in presence and monitoring the situation. They would be giving out tickets. So there were a couple of days that they would just sit in certain areas and really enforce, you know, the stopping of the stop signs. I haven't seen that happen for, I'd have to say, at least 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Mr. Hale, that's all the questions we have. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
No problem. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Our next delegate is Brad Fairley. Welcome, Brad.
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Anyway, so my comments are primarily related to process. I think some of the other two people who've spoken have hit some of the highlights, but I just want to make some comments about the process that was used by the city. So I went to the PIC, despite telling the residents that it was all or nothing, i.e. we were going to get 8 measures or none. The city has come up with a hybrid plan consisting of 3 proposed measures. Those 3 proposed measures include 2 of the original 8 and one that we have never seen before. So they've suddenly come up with a plan that went from all or nothing to a hybrid consisting of a portion of the original plan plus 1 additional thing that's never been seen before. And again, I'm referring to, I've made a written submission, so I'm trying to summarize that. The city failed twice to get the required response rate to move forward, but is moving forward regardless. The city failed to present the revised plan to the neighborhood. It was substantially different. Again, we were told it was 8 or nothing, and we've got 3. And I think the city did send out the letter the other day, but again, it was completely illegible. The image that was shown to you folks with red and green looked really great. In black and white, it's all gray. It's completely illegible. So again, in terms of providing decent feedback to the community, outlining what the data was and how they got to where they got to, there's 3 shades of gray, which are completely indistinguishable. And again, the city, you just heard the representative say that it was delayed for a year. So we had a year to get this figured out, and instead we get a letter with 8 days to respond to it. I just find that response time ridiculous after a year of waiting for information. I think that if you wanted to run a really decent public engagement process, you'd give the people more than 8 days to respond. So in general, I think the city's done a poor job of working with the neighborhood. I think there's been a lot of poor communication, and I think there's definitely been an inadequate time to respond. It makes me feel like you're trying to push this through without anyone noticing. It's like you know better than us, and so you're just going to go ahead and do it. I really encourage you to not consult us if you're just going to go ahead and implement a plan that that we've not seen before. There's an old adage about you can't fight City Hall, and I think if the city's going to do this sort of thing, it makes people believe it's true and that there's less and less incentive to participate. You may wonder why the participation rate in municipal elections is so low. It's because we feel powerless to influence the process. Municipal staff make decisions because they know best, and politicians blindly approve the decisions. So in closing, I'd like to make 3 comments. First off, the entire problem, which I agree there's a problem, is a result of the city approving a bad design 25 years ago when they approved the development plan for Deer Ridge. And guess what? The taxpayers get stuck with the bill to fix it. That's really frustrating. Second, we're in the worst economic recession in the century, and this probably is certainly one wonders whether we really need to do this at this particular time or whether it's worth considering a delay. However, I'm going to make the third comment, and that because I'm convinced the city is going to proceed regardless of the input received from the public, because I don't think you can fight City Hall, I'd like to make the comment that I support speed humps over speed cushions for the following reasons. A couple of years ago, for the last few years, the city's installed ped zone signs in the neighborhood, which incidentally were installed without public input. And they screwed up the signage on them. And so it caused a lot of problems with people driving on the wrong side of the road whenever there was bikes nearby, because essentially it takes your road and turns it from a three lanes to 2 lanes. And when people can't get by on the one side, they go around it on the other. I've personally seen 3 people drive on the wrong side of the road to get around the ped zone signs when there was blockage in their lane. Again, not a good idea. So again, the risk, these devices, that the cushions that they want to use, basically they involve both vertical and horizontal deflection. And I think we're better off to not have that and to go with straight vertical. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you. Again, I made the written submission so you guys can read it in detail. Thanks very much.
Okay, Mr. Fairley, we do have a question for you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was muted. Brad, thank you very much for coming in and presenting your thoughts on this whole thing. Do you belong to the Deer Ridge Facebook group?
I do.
Now, shortly after that report came up from the city staff, I did post some information on your Facebook site, setting out where you could go into the city's website and see better pictures and all that. So, and I did hear from a lot of people who did do that. So you're absolutely right that we do often sometimes err for the sake, I'm not sure for what sake, when we send out reports and we try to send out things in black and white that were originally in color, and they're very difficult to read and make any sense out of. So thank you for reminding us of that. And going forward, I think that's something that we need to improve upon. I do disagree with you that you can't fight City Hall. I've been fighting City Hall for many years. And it is, yes, you can, and I do want to applaud your neighborhood, because throughout this whole process, you have been very active. You've attended. We've had good attendance at the group meetings, and just in the last several weeks, we've heard from a lot of the people in your neighborhood. So they are participating. So I know we don't always like with the results that we end up with, but I'm hopeful that we're going through a process here that will give everybody a chance to deal with the issue. And as I pointed out in my posting, it's being dealt with today, but we now have 2 weeks before it's ratified by council, and it gives even people that haven't participated at this point an opportunity to add their 2 cents worth. So thank you very much for your thoughts, and hopefully going forward, I do hope that you'll have a little more trust in City Hall, because I really do believe that City Hall can be challenged and beaten. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'd just like to highlight the fact that most of my comments were about process. I do understand that there are issues with it, but I do live at the back of Deer Ridge, so we've reduced it down to 3, but I still have to go over all 3 traffic measures to get out of the subdivision. But I'm certainly sympathetic to the people in Settlers Ridge. This is a fairly divisive issue it's a tough one. It's not easy to solve, but I just wish the city could do a little bit better job on their process. I think that would help improve things dramatically. I think 8 days after a year is simply insufficient. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fairley. That's all the delegates we have. Am I correct, Madam?
Yes, that is correct. There is nobody else in the meeting.
All right. Councillor Gazzola, is up for questions to staff. So Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'd like staff to respond to the 8 days notice. Can you clarify exactly the amount of time and just go over the process a little more because it's in question.
Through the chair to the councillor, we sent out a letter to the Deer Ridge neighborhood dated February 15th. And that was to provide information on the changes to the preferred plan was voted on in early 2020. Sorry, that letter was dated February 16th. To notify residents that this was going to council as a recommendation. The map was included to try and explain a little bit about how we arrived at this hybrid version based on the geolocation of the voting. Apologies that it wasn't eligible in color, but we did provide the stats and the breakdown to help explain it further, as well as more written explanation to help explain the map. In terms of the overall process, we followed the same process that we always do and what's approved in the policy. An initial initiation survey followed by 2 public meetings and then a final survey. In terms of the plan, we probably went through 3 or 4 iterations of the plan. And this final iteration where we scaled it back to 3, the delegate is correct. This is the first time that they've seen the scaled back version, but residents voted on the version with 8 measures versus 3 in early 2020.
Okay, I just want to.
Through the chair, just to add to that, in terms of going from the 8 measures to 3 measures, that's very typical in terms of process. Generally speaking, what we do is we take the information that we garner from the first 2 meetings and then from the surveys that we send out as well. And we'll modify the plan based on that. So in terms of process, this did follow a typical process, and what you see in front of you today is really a reflection of what you heard from the residents today. The street operates very much like a collector roadway at the north end, but when you get to the south end, it's more of a local roadway carrying much less traffic. So we did hear from the neighborhood that there is really a divisiveness to it in terms of that split, and it's really a reflection of that major collector operation in the north end versus that more local feel in the south end.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that the original letter did go out on February the 16th. It did not include the report that we're looking at today that went to council. I'm not sure when that final report went out, but on that letter on February the 16th, it was clearly noted when this meeting would be and what the process would be. I followed up on Facebook with the entire process as to when it would come to council, what the process is as it's going through council, and when it would come back to be ratified. I wonder if I can ask you also if you can just expand a little on the question of safety and time and dealing with the fire department. I know there was some questions on that, some concern. If we could just go over that again to what you've done to make certain that is not an issue.
Through the chair to the councillor, our objective is to ensure that the traffic calming plans do not impact existing emergency response times. So during the design phase and the engagement phase of the project, we did meet with the fire chief and the deputy fire chief to review the proposed traffic calming plans on Deer Ridge Drive specifically. And they supported the plans because we are using a speed cushion design. And the speed cushion design was specifically developed with fire and emergency services to not impact existing emergency response times. We do have the speed located throughout the city, and fire navigates them on a regular basis with no impact. They don't have to slow down. They're designed in a way that there's enough space between the two speed cushions for their wheelbase, so their wheels aren't impacted by the vertical measures, and they drive over the flex signs that are installed in between the speed humps. So we've worked closely with fire, and they don't see any impacts to their response times based on the plan developed.
Okay, Councilor Gazzola, I have you in your second 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, just one final question. I would like staff, if they could just, Mr. Cronkite could do that, if you could just go into a little more detail as to what kind of decisions you have to make when percentages don't always work out to the way we would like to see sort of laid out in our policy, but our policies aren't chiseled in stone, right? If you could just expand on that a little.
Through the chair, that's exactly it, Councilor Gazzola. When we're looking at the policy, so the policy is set in place to give us, a set general direction. But when we're going through the exercise of a review for a street like Deer Ridge Drive, and when we're preparing recommendations for council, we take everything into account. So yes, we're taking into account the policy, but we're also taking into account the existing conditions of the roadway itself. And so when you look at Deer Ridge Drive, and I want to commend staff that have worked on Aaron and Steve when they looked at this plan. Going from 8 measures to 3 is a recognition that we do have areas on the street that have a significant amount of volume and significant speed, and historically speaking, we have had collisions as well. So when we take all this information into account, we bring a recommendation forward to council, and we're acknowledging that we haven't hit those minimum thresholds here, but staff feel that recommending these measures for Deer Ridge Drive is in effect trying to promote a safer, more conducive street to neighborhoods. So to give you some kind of context, we do have instances on the street, usually a handful per week, in terms of the data that we recorded, where people are going over 100 kilometers an hour. So that is concerning. The 85th percentile in multiple sections along the street is 60 kilometers an hour. Again, that is concerning. So these are the types of things that we're trying to address when we're looking at this. We're not only looking at the policy itself, but we're looking at whether or not we feel the neighborhood is safe and whether we can make it safer. And in this instance, the measures that we've recommended are really targeted at making the neighborhood safer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I maybe I've missed this, but is there a traffic report, like a study included in this report that we have? Like, I don't see any speed. You've just mentioned some of them, Mr. Cronkite, but I don't see any of that data in the report that we've received. Am I missing something?
Through the chair to the councillor. So the data was presented and discussed at length through the entire process. I can share some of that with you right now. So as Barry mentioned, we have an 85th percentile speed, the speed at which 85% of drivers travel at or below, reaching 60 kilometers an hour near Terracewood Crescent. And when we look deeper into that data and we start looking at speed bins, we see drivers traveling at much higher thresholds. So at that data point, we have over 1,000 vehicles traveling between 60 and 70 kilometers an hour a day or a week. And that's based on a 1-week study. But more concerning still, there's approximately 170 vehicles traveling above 70 kilometers an hour, and then 10 traveling above 90 kilometers an hour, and some above 100. So that's based on a 1-week study. And then again, through that's at one data point. And then where we're focusing some more of our efforts is through the S-bend on Deer Ridge Crescent. And S-bends, they're more challenging to navigate, and there's sightline issues there. as well as a lot of driveways. And we're seeing, when we look into the speed bins, that deeper analysis, we're seeing a significant amount of trips trending into the 60 km/h range on a weekly basis.
So yeah, you don't have to send it right this moment, but it would be useful to have it before after this meeting, before the council meeting, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
I'm okay, Councillor Ioannidis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the speed cushion choice. If staff had considered any other tools in the toolbox to use to help slow the traffic. When residents in my ward have asked for speed cushions or speed tables or whatever we call them, the answer has almost always been, well, that tool ends up, just slowing down traffic until they get there, and then it makes them speed up again, which is some of the feedback we did hear from residents who were opposed to it. So I'm just concerned about this as the tool, and I'm wondering if we can find any other tools.
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, we start this process with a blank slate, and we look at where we're seeing the highest speeds and collisions, and we look at various options to try and mitigate that. The speed cushion design, again, as I mentioned earlier, is designed with fire in mind. And the placement of all of our traffic calming measures, and we consider the current location of existing traffic controls like stop signs, we purposely try and locate them with specific spacing in between the measures, somewhere around 150 to 250 meters apart. So drivers start to learn that it doesn't create any efficiency by speeding up between the measures versus just traveling at a controlled speed through all of those measures. And with the speed hump, the speed cushion design, the average ADC across the city is about 45 kilometers an hour. And the posted speed limit on Deerage Drive is 40. So we feel the measures that we're recommending are in alignment with the types of speeds that we want to see on Deerage Drive. So the spacing is critical, and we've worked with the existing traffic controls to try and create that consistent spacing through the areas that have the highest speeds and volumes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola, you are permitted to either put forward the motion, or I'm gonna refrain you from making any further questions because we give you 2 shots.
No, I'm not asking for questions. I just raised my hand. Are you recognizing me, or?
Are you going to move the recommendation, or are you going to put forward a motion?
Yeah, I will move the entire recommendation for this whole report. I think it involves 3 locations, right? Would you prefer I didn't do that?
Okay, that's good.
I didn't hear anything on the other issues, so I'm moving the entire report before us. Okay.
Okay. If you wish to have,
I'd like to make a comment. Okay, if I could.
Go right ahead. You're the only one right now.
All right. I thank you very much, and I want to thank both sides of that. Here we have the problem here in Deer Ridge that the poor American people having this real lack of unity, and it's almost a similar type problem where we've got a sort of almost a 50-50, and it is a tough situation to have to deal with. But just a little history on this whole area. About 15 years ago, we did make it was going back actually that it was a bad design. I'm not an engineer, but I've heard since then that it was a bad design, and hindsight is always more perfect. but we have to live with it. And so we did make some changes about 15 years ago. The other thing at that time, the trees on the whole street hadn't really even been put into place. So the city did move rather quickly to try to put trees on the boulevards, which helps to slow traffic down. And then they did a couple of minor changes like stop signs, but we wanted to give it a period of time to see how it worked. And within time, it was evident that there was still a problem. And I was pleased as a ward councillor for that area to see how quickly the city staff were dealing with this, because there were a lot of problems, and that we have a long list of places that want traffic calming, and this was able to move to the top. So I was pleased that we were able to get to deal with it. Now we got to deal with it at the worst time in the last 100 years when we ran into this pandemic. We had several good meetings, things were moving along, and then all of a sudden everything went to hell in a basket. So at any rate, it's now here before us. It's a tough situation, and I fully realize that as the ward councillor, as in anything in life, you can't please everybody, and this is a good situation where everybody's not going to be pleased. If I do err, I've made the decision that I need to err for the sake of safety. And so for that reason, I really believe that it is a safety issue, that we all drive too fast, and I've always included myself in that category, because we forget, we get onto an open stretch, and we want to become race drivers, whatever it is, but we all speed too much. We all drive too fast. Someday when we have autonomous vehicles, that problem will disappear, and that won't be that far a distance into the future. But for the present time, I'm supporting. I think staff have tried to compromise. Maybe the process, for a number of reasons, didn't get dealt with as smoothly as it might have been. But I think they've really tried to compromise and come up with a solution that we should try and work on. And as with all traffic calming things, we do come back later and review them and see how they are working, and if needs to be, it can be changed. So I would ask. I support this, and I would hope that all of council will, so that we can move ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. I really want to validate what Councillor Gazzola said about safety. I think as councillors, one of the things we hear about the most is speeds on residential streets, and safety is number one. And that's what Councillor Gazzola is basing his support of this on. I'm certainly going to support his decision on this. And I hope that this is going to be one of the streets where we're able to have one of our mobile speed cameras up that display the speed, so people have a better idea of the speed they're traveling at. But again, thank you, staff. I've been involved in traffic calming streets in my ward, and they do their best to find a compromise that works for all. They do have to take the consideration of emergency response times into account as well. So I just want to thank everybody, residents, Councilor Gazzola, and staff for their hard work on this.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Ioannidis, and thanks to Councillor Gazzola for moving the motion, and the staff for the work that's been done, and to residents on both sides of the issue who have expressed their thoughts, either positive or contrary, with respect to the speed humps and well, the various alternatives that are being considered as part of this project. This has been an issue that I know has been a significant concern for even prior to my time as mayor. And when I was a councillor in the adjoining ward, I would hear from people in that ward who I knew and who were expressing concerns around speeding issues to Councillor Gazzola, to myself, and as Councillor Gazzola, and to others. And as Councillor Gazzola said, you know, we have tried a variety of things over a long period of time to see how the community would respond. I found it interesting in the map that was shown earlier that most of the area where the percentage was greater in opposition to it, in fact, is those that are farther or deeper into the subdivision and would have to travel, you know, and perhaps, you know, have a few seconds longer added onto their travel going forward. At the end of the day, I think what is important here is to ensure that safety is paramount. And I think everyone has tried to find a balance between those who would like to see things slow down even more and those who would, you know, really don't want to see any additional measures put into place. And so I will be supporting the motion. You know, as time goes on, it'll give us an opportunity to review it again, as we normally do after these kinds of measures get put in place. And if we have to make some adjustments, we will make those adjustments. We've done that in the past, and we can do that again if that's necessary. I think the long-term solution is the focus that we have made as a city in new developments on building complete streets and looking at these kinds of things during the development process and not afterwards. And so that should help us in the future as we address this issue in the remaining subdivisions as they're developed in the city.
Okay, we have no further questions. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola. All those in favor?
Excuse me, I'd like to call for a recorded vote so everybody knows how everybody voted, okay? I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, we will start off with Mayor Verbanovic. I'm going to go by what's on my screen.
I'll support it.
Councillor Gazzola,
I support it.
Councillor Marsh,
I am not going to support it. It might change my mind at council.
Councillor Galloway Seelock,
I'm in support.
Councillor Davey,
In support.
Councillor Chapman,
I support it.
Councillor Schneider,
In support.
Councillor Singh,
In support.
Councillor Michaud,
I support it.
Councillor Johnson,
In support.
and myself, I support it. And it's been moved and passed. And with that, we will move to the final item, item number 9, appointment of the tribunal members for a lodging house. So I'm not sure if we have 3 members who want to volunteer or whatever. Councillor Michaud, are you volunteering?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, are you volunteering?
I've done this before, and it's a great experience. If you don't get enough people, I will volunteer. So, but I've already had the fun opportunity, which I would like to share. But if you don't get enough, I will go along and volunteer.
Okay. Do we have any other members who would like to volunteer? Oh, Councillor Marsh and Councillor Schneider. So Ms. Flackdu, is that enough for you, the 3, and then have Councillor Gazzola as an alternative?
For you, Chair. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and what is there a recommendation? Like, do we have to pass this?
You do need a motion, Councillor. I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Mayor Vranovic. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And that concludes today's Community Infrastructure Service Committee for Monday, March 8th, 2021.
Can I ask a question before you go, please? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Quick question. Yeah, I just want to go back to this new system that we have for agendas. It's really it works very well. But like in that topic when we were discussing the traffic calming, Councillor Chapman requested some information, and that information was dealt with in prior reports. Why, in the future, is it possible to have at the bottom of each report the listings and the connection to previous reports that dealt with the topic? I expect that's being contemplated, but I just wanted to deal with it because now's an appropriate time. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I think
Go ahead.
Yeah, Councillor Gazzola, I think what you're asking is that old reports have a link on the bottom that if you just a hyperlink, and if you just click on them, either you or members of the public can refer to them.
Right.
So perhaps clerks can take that away and take a look at that. Ms. Robb? Okay, great. So I'll move on then and call this special council meeting to order. Motion to go in camera for the education item listed by Councillor Galloway-Seelock, seconded by Councillor Michaud. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Somebody want to move that? Councillor Galloway-Seelock, seconded. Councillor Schneider, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then now you can use the adjournment from before.
Mr. Mayor, could we have a 2-minute break?
Yeah, sure. But let's make it 2 minutes because we're already 20 minutes behind. And I know that